Hello, and welcome back to another episode of ABA Mom. I am your host, Allie, a board certified behavior analyst and mama five. And today I have a very special guest from Connect and Care, Phil Carrenard. Phil, can you go ahead and just share a little bit about your background, what brought you into the field of ABA?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So let's see, I've been in the field for a little over 5 years now. So I started right smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. I had just finished my undergrad in psychology and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with that degree. At the time, my passions were working with kids. I had a little bit of background in that. And then I just have a real passion for sports. So I was hoping to find a way to combine those two passions. But also around that time, I did get a recommendation from a friend who kind of gave me like the rundown, albeit not that accurate, of ABA, but it did sound like something that I could kind of sink my teeth into. A little bit of added context also, my brother is on the spectrum, and when they mentioned, ABA and, how it primarily is used, to assist, the autistic community, that was something that kind of grabbed my attention. And I was like, that's something that I wish my brother had access to as we were kind of growing up, right? So I started that in October of 2020. Started in home, didn't really know what I was getting into at the time, but I had a really, really supportive BCBA who kind of got at least helped me get my feet wet. So I did that for about 6 months in Atlanta and then moved to back to my college town in Chattanooga, Tennessee, joined the clinic, that's where I feel like I got to learn the most about the field, kind of get my feet under me, and I really developed a passion for the field. And I was really pushed by my supervisors to get into grad school and pursue my BCBA. So after about a year of working in the clinic, I applied for Arizona State, got accepted, finished that master's in about a year and a half. And when I had finished my master's, I was pretty close to the hours that I needed to get my BCABA. So I decided that that was probably going to be the best path for me and my career goals. So I decided that that was kind of the path I wanted to follow. But unfortunately, Tennessee just doesn't have a lot of openings with the BCABA. So I kind of looked around in the Southeast and landed on Florida. Florida had a few options, especially in Tampa. So picked up and moved down there the day I graduated, took a job there, and was able to get almost all of the remaining indirect hours that I needed to sit for my BCBA. And then, after spending about a year down there, I I kind of was able to get like a brief landscape of what ABA in Florida looked like. And I kind of came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to be the best fit for me. Not to say it's not a good fit for anybody, but it just wasn't the best for me. So I again surveyed the Southeast and landed on Charlotte, North Carolina, came up, got the rest of my unrestricted hours at one company, and then sat for my exam in May of 2025 on Cinco de Mayo, actually. And then um, I joined Connect and Care the following week, and here we are now.
That's great. What was it like just starting ABA in such a chaotic time? Like, and also just you just moved around like everywhere. You're like, I'm just gonna try ABA in all the states on the East Coast,
Right,
which is
right.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, starting ABA during such a hectic time, I think I had the luxury of not knowing anything else. Just getting out of college, my life was just, hopping around from job to job and odd job to odd job. So I didn't really know anything else. I think the job I worked before that was like in a warehouse. So I was very much like, I'll take it, right? So I will say honestly though, studying for the exam during the pandemic, I don't know if this is everyone else's experience. For me, it was a little bit easier because I was at home so often. It just wasn't a lot of distractions. So
Yeah.
I would just wake up, my desk was right next to my bed. I would wake up, sit at my desk and start studying. For me, it was easy, and I just didn't have any other context for anything else. The exam process was a little weird. I took the exam in my bedroom, and my proctor was very nitpicky about, like, why are those bed sheets like that? And it was
Oh my gosh.
yeah, he I feel like he was sent there to sabotage my whole test experience. But, thankfully I passed. So, Yeah. And then as far as all that moving around, I think that kind of just stems from how my parents approach things. My dad, he's always just worked in schools, but he's someone that's always believed in, optimizing his opportunity. And if he feels like, um, his current situation won't allow him to be the best version of himself, he will pick us all up and move, and me, my brother, and my mom, and we lived all over the East Coast, from
Yeah.
Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Georgia, all over the place. So that's honestly that's been the easy part. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping now that, I think Charlotte's a place that I can really kind of settle down in, but
Right.
that's kind of just been something that's been a part of my life.
Well, I think it's really neat because it's all kinds of different experiences in different places, and you and I have some similarities in the fact that I moved around a whole lot as a kid too, but it was all in Florida. So I always stayed
Yeah.
in Florida, always lived here. Sorry, this wasn't the place for you. But I do really like the warm weather, although it's 30 degrees today, and I would rather not
Yeah.
leave
Right.
my
Yeah.
house. So anything colder than that, I can't imagine living
Oh
in.
yeah.
Visiting is fine, living is different.
Oh yeah.
And then the COVID, I took my BCBA exam during COVID too, so I remember that experience, and I just remember taking my test and, like, having, like, a mask on and being, like, already anxious, and I'm like, "I can't even breathe," but I do
Yeah.
agree with this time to study. I did have a lot more time to study because there weren't all these outs I couldn't really go anywhere. I couldn't
Yep.
I was forced to stay
Exactly.
home, so I had
Right.
plenty of study time, so that was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a crazy
Definitely.
time.
Oh yeah. I know. It honestly, like, looking back, because when looking back at that time, I just remember, like, it doesn't it really doesn't even feel real, because, like, I just had this utopian kind of regimen of, wake up, study, exercise, and that was my day. Like, that it was really broken down, and I don't know if there's ever going to be a time in my life where it's just going to be that simple, where
Right.
you're in the house all day. Your options are really limited. Like,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do. You're not seeing anybody. Yeah, it was a really crazy time.
It was really crazy, and it kind of totally changed our field too, because that was really the start of, like, some of that telehealth services, like,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't offered during telehealth, and now, in some situations, like, especially for analysts, like, that's an option, which was not an
of
option
course.
before, so that part's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of great, I think.
Oh no, of course. I mean, coming in, that again, going back to your original question, that was all I knew, right? Like,
Right.
my first yeah, my first two BCBAs were both telehealth. I think one of them, would kind of, made the trip up a little bit more consistently, but I mean, all I knew was just, trying to run session in a new house, and I'm trying to carry the iPad around and, like, hey, he's over here.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's gonna be
you know,
so funny on the other end of that. I always think about the
exactly.
RBTs, and I'm like, "You could just put me down."
No, right? And, like, trying to chase, a 5-year-old around a new house, and, you have your BCBA with you, and, like, "Yeah, I think, the playroom is over there." I don't know. It was just such a crazy time, but
Yeah.
again, I just didn't know anything else, so I thought, "Okay, this is a real crazy field I'm entering, but, I kinda like it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you're here and you stayed. I do have a question about becoming a BCABA to a BCBA because some people, and some of my RBTs have asked me too. It's like, should I do BCABA first or should I do BCBA first? And I did it where I just went and I took the exam and I was a BCBA. So what was your kind of like your decision on becoming a BCAB first before becoming a BCBA?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things that went into it. One of the biggest, I think, selling points for me was it's the ultimate mock exam. I had one friend, who I was working with at the time, and was, like, maybe a semester ahead of me at ASU. She went the same route, and she was a BCABA for about maybe 4 months before her BCBA, and what she just recommended it because after she took her BCABA, she felt super calm and prepared going into her exam. So I feel like for me, like you can't put a price on experience. So
Right.
I was really excited about that. And then I think for me, to be kind of blunt, I think finding a way to put a little bit of wrinkle in my day-to-day ABA experience was really crucial for me to avoid burnout,
Yeah.
because I think at that point I'd probably been an RBT for about 3 years, and sometimes it can get a little repetitive, and I think I found myself working with a lot of similar client profiles, and I think I wanted to kind of find a way to kind of branch out a little bit, work with some different populations, see a different perspective, find a way to kind of have more opportunities to apply what I was, learning in class. So I think for me, I just needed to find a way to spread my wings. So that was I think those were the two main selling points for me as far as going for my BCABA first. I know plenty of people that go straight to BCBA and they're like, let's just get her done. But I think for me, I was really looking for a way to kind of add a little bit of wrinkle to my day to day, as opposed to, go in, run my direct sessions and, go home. So that was the big thing for me.
Yeah, and I think that one of the benefits to becoming a BCABA first is the supervision that you still receive. So you're not just kind of like cut loose on your own. It's like, okay, be free. Now you're an analyst. I think you
Exactly.
always have somebody to kind of follow up. Although we should all have mentors regardless if
Hmm.
a BCABA or a student analyst or a BCBA, we should all have some kind of mentor. But I think you kind of have like a required like mentor to do your supervision, so that is a big plus, I think, to
Yes.
doing that first. So you and I talked before, and we talked about the importance of building connections with BTs and RBTs. So why does this matter so much to you?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm an extrovert at heart, right? So I couldn't do it any other way anyways, but specifically for ABA, I feel like, we if we're gonna, follow this pairing model from direct services from the BTs to the clients, I think it's only natural to follow a similar model from analyst to BT. It's almost, I would say it's impossible to run a consistent session with a kiddo that you're not paired with. And I pretty much see it the same way with, as an analyst to a BT. I'm someone who gives a lot of feedback throughout the session, and I don't sugarcoat, right? So I want to give positive feedback, and I also want to be able to give constructive feedback in a way that doesn't feel, punitive or like I'm picking on anybody. So I feel like having that pairing done beforehand kind of puts a lot of that at ease. I want you to know that I want my BTs to know that we're in this together. We have a common goal. I care just as much about your growth in ABA as I do our clients' growth. So yeah, I think for me that just leads to the most fruitful relationship as far as getting the most out of those sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes we are pretty good about remembering, okay, like pairing with our client, we've got to build that relationship. But sometimes, we can lack that in our field. Like we need to have that rapport with our BTs and RBT, and then always like presenting the feedback, but also having like something positive too. And there's
Yeah,
been times where I'm like, okay, I've really got to think about how I want to say this and how I want to make sure like, I know that we're on the same page, that we're a team here. So like I think that's really important. And then I think that kind of comes naturally when you build a relationship with your BTs.
for
So
sure.
on the flip side of that, what challenges have you seen when technicians don't get enough feedback or support?
Yeah, I think um that's a great question. I know, well, I'll speak from personal experience. When I when I was still learning, a lot of the basics um of ABA, and I felt like I wasn't getting feedback or support from my analyst, it led me, at least, me personally, to kind of try to figure out a lot of things on my own. And to me, that was to my detriment. I whenever I would kind of get this avoidant type of vibe when it came to reaching out to my BCBA, because I was like, well, okay, they're not really making themselves available, so maybe they don't enjoy working with this case, or maybe there's something about me that they just don't click with. So it would kind of lead me to avoid, reaching out to them for support. So it kind of had like a, if I felt like they were avoiding me, I would then avoid them and then try to take things into my own hands. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of BTs in the field. If they feel like they aren't going to be supported, then they kind of just try to figure it out on their own. And, that I don't think that that's necessarily the role of the BT to kind of
Right.
make those, treatment plan decisions, on the fly, fully,
Right.
without the support of their analysts. So, when that support's not there, it's just rarely ends well.
Right, yeah. No, I completely agree. And one thing I think is difficult too is the interactions when the supervision is limited, like sometimes like an analyst has like a full caseload or the scheduling conflicts, right? Like I have one client now that's like evening and I'm like, I'm gonna try to make this work
Yes.
and the best in my schedule. So sometimes things like that happen. And then also virtually, I think sometimes it's hard to build that rapport. So what do you kind of suggest for any kind of like limitations or doing supervision virtually? Like what do you think are some things that might help in those situations?
Yeah, I think I just kind of leaned back to, I don't remember the exact code for it, but I just remember in the ethics code and taking on what you can handle as
Yeah,
an analyst, right?
right.
I know, I think being a BCABA for a bit and then now being a BCBA for a few months, I'm starting to get a good grasp on what my bandwidth truly is, even though, like, if I have X amount of hours in the week, knowing, okay, maybe if maybe my caseload isn't full billable
Right.
hours wise, but I also know what this is going to require from me energy wise and like the time of day and things like that. So knowing what you're signing up for before taking on a case, I think is really crucial. And then, there are times when I've been hybrid and I've done some telehealth. And for me, I know this isn't every telehealth BCBA's situation, but for me, I try on the leading up to times when I'm going to be out of the office, I try to have just as much FaceTime leading up to it to try to kind of cover my bases a little bit. If I know I'm going to be gone for maybe a week or so, I guess, like, out of office, just trying to the week before, like, make sure, like, hey, is there anything that you need to see modeled, or what is something that you'd actually need like an extra set of hands for. And then also reaching out to, if, like, you're doing telehealth in the clinic, reaching out to, if you have student analysts in the clinic, trying to see if
Yeah.
they could be your eyes and ears for you, to kind of help with that modeling and feedback when you can't quite do it the same way from behind a computer screen. So I would say try to lean on those things as well.
No, I think that's great too. And then one thing I try to do if I know I'm gonna be out too is to kind of double up on like my week, like my time as much as I can. That doesn't always work
Yeah,
out beautifully, but
of
I
course.
try to schedule so that way everyone gets their supervision and I'm able to answer the questions. And I like what you said too about it sounds very collaborative, which is, I think, a great approach on just kind of saying, hey, like, what is it that you need right now? Or like, what can I model for you? And let them tell you. Because sometimes I think that, especially what I've noticed with RBTs that maybe didn't have great supervision or limited or brand new RBTs, is that sometimes you're viewed as like, the supervisor and it's just like you're just checking off like a box on like did you do this right or not do this right, and it's not very
Yep.
collaborative, and I definitely think that in our field that's not the way that is
Yeah.
designed to be. So I really like your approach on working with RBTs, which kind of just
Yep.
leads me into which I think it kind of goes together too, but as far as having that emphasis on antecedent manipulations, because having a good rapport with your RBTs is definitely a proactive strategy, right? And then, so can you just kind of explain the difference between being proactive versus reactive in sessions?
100%. Yeah, being proactive, I mean, it's like you said, those antecedent manipulations, they save us a lot of time, frustration, energy, as far as dealing with, behaviors or running trials, even simple things, right? Like when you're presenting, let's say you're going to DTT, and you have a client who's, I mean let's be honest, like how many clients just are super pumped to go to DTT, right? But a lot of like right, like one thing that's just going to make it easier on yourself is like having your materials ready, right? You have a kid who's already like not thrilled about having to like maybe leave something that they're enjoying, but you can make that a lot more seamless by having your materials ready on the desk or the table, and versus, all right, we're in the room, okay, oh snap, I have to go find this, and now I have to go set this up, and then that's like another 3 or 4 minutes that your client is away from reinforcement, right? That they didn't necessarily sign up for that. They were
Right. Right.
the expectation was placed that, all right, we're going to leave Legos and now we're going to do matching, and we're going to do this for 10 minutes. But we, if in our not being prepared, we've actually kind of added a little bit, we've kind of thinned the schedule of reinforcement by not being ready, and that can lead to behaviors on the back end. So now we may start seeing some of those escape maintain behaviors while also trying to work on skill acquisition, and then you could really be stuck in a whole mess, and then you kind of lose the plot as far as like
Yeah.
why were we here in the first place. So that's why I always push as much as possible for those, being proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. I really like what you said as far as having your materials ready, because sometimes, I'll ask, like, when I text, I'm like, "Oh, did you have, the first Sun board or whatever?" And it's like, "Oh, it's in the other room all the way across." So I think it's important, and it's something, it becomes kind of a habit for us, whether that's us or like the RBTs, to just kind of like have those materials, because
Yeah,
oftentimes, like we forget. So I think it's
of
important
course.
for us to kind of prep ourselves, be like, okay, do I have everything I need? And then, I think too, just having, if it's like a lot of stuff to carry, like clipboards or
Yep,
like, a backpack, like whatever it might be, to kind of help you carry all the materials, like while your client's like moving around and not in
exactly.
one spot, because then you left it in the room and now we can't use the
Yes.
first ed board unless somebody gets it.
Yeah. I think also like that, just being cognizant of like
Yeah.
what we're asking of our clients, right? Like because the more, and I really think that it's so easy to lose sight of this through, these sessions are like 2, 3, 4 hours long sometimes, right? And at like if we're not prepared and we're like an hour delivery is off, then technically, we're not, what we're saying isn't what we're expecting. If we're saying I need you to wait, this is, you know from experience, like if I'm expecting you to wait for me at the door for 30 seconds, and like, all right, we're going to wait for 30 seconds, but then actually it's more like a minute because I have to go and find my clipboard and or find my tablet or
Right.
whatever, then is it truly, then it's not the trial that we originally are, that's not the SD that we presented, right? So I think it's so important to be cognizant of what expectations we're setting, as opposed to like what we actually have the bandwidth to do in the moment.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm super passionate about.
No, I think that's great too, to just being, and you said cognizant as far as what it is that we're expecting our clients to do too. And hopefully that kind of helps too, as far as like the materials that we're gonna need too, because it's like, if the expectation is communication and they have, an AAC device, I should have that AAC device for them to be able to
Exactly. Yeah.
communicate that. I should have that with me. So I think that's really important as far as the materials before every session, just being prepared. And then we kind of talked a little bit about, which I think is very interesting because I don't think it's talked about enough, is the body positioning and then awareness of your surrounding. Can you provide some details on how that might impact client success?
Yeah. I think that's something that, again, also super passionate about. You can see
I love
it
that you're
really.
passionate about it. It's great.
I could talk about it ad nauseum, but there's so many aspects of it. There's like a behavior and intervention side of it, and then there's also like there's a pairing, and there's a skill acquisition, and there's a NET side of it. But like going with the behavior intervention side of it, like let's say, the classic one, elopement, right? Let's say you're in a space and there's most likely outside of that space, there's a hallway where, it's not safe for our friends to just take off and run down, right? And you have an eloper. Let's say if your kiddo is playing with something, close to the door, and you're on the other side of the room, and they decide, you know what, I think I'm done with this room,
Yeah.
and they decide to just leave. And maybe every clinic is different as far as like child locks and stuff like that. They decide to go and take off. Well, then also your behavior intervention is compromised, because you're playing catch up, trying to chase this kiddo down the hallway. And not everybody is, these kids are fast, right? So,
Right.
and that leads to, again, it could lead to a behavior chain, and God knows what. Versus if you're standing between your client and the door, you can implement a behavior intervention before the elopement is already in full swing. And it's just one of those things that, like, and it just makes the session easier. You're not out of breath. You're not trying to prompt them to like ask to
Yeah.
ask to leave while you're like chasing them down the hallway. I mean, like we've I described this, but I know that you can picture it in your head, right? Like there's that scene where you're seeing the RBT trying to say, you can ask me to leave, or
Right.
when their kids like 10 feet ahead, and it's like,
Right.
okay, right? Like,
Too far away now.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, that's one big thing. And then also, on the flip side, on the positive side, our clients can tell when we want to be near them, right? Even if they, don't have the language to express that, but showing interest in, what our clients are playing with, or, introducing them to new activities, that begins with proximity, right? So, I mean, obviously safety stuff aside, but like, you can't introduce your client to new experiences or reinforcers from across the room.
Right.
You have to enter their world and enter their space to make yourself a reinforcer, and to show them, hey, let's try this functional play thing. Or, oh, I love how you're playing with this. Have you tried doing it like that? You can't do that when you're 10, 15 feet away. That's pretty much my elevator pitch, I guess, body positioning as far as that.
No, I think that's great, and I like what you said as far as a client will know when you wanna be near them, because I think, our job, like, our jobs, the tech's job is hard, and the techs are there every day.
Oh yeah.
We jump around, we see different clients, our day gets kinda mixed up, which is, chaotic and fun at the same time. But, the techs, like, you're typically with a client or two, like, you're there with them all day or most of the day. The large chunk of your day is with this one child. There's gonna be a point where you're tired, you're exhausted,
Yeah.
and you kinda need a break yourself, or you're ready to go home and you're like
Oh yeah.
your stuff up. Like, when you start packing your stuff up, they're gonna see that.
Oh yeah.
Or if you're irritated or something like that, clients read that, like, they can see that
Oh yeah.
body language. So I think it's really important to, just like I think it too, and I don't know that all clinics, be able to provide a break. I'll tell you, when I was an RBT, I started working at a clinic that didn't offer breaks. They said, "You can have a break," but every time I was like, "Okay, I need a break. I need my 30 minutes every day," because I like to eat lunch without my client away. So, but it was always a problematic, which it shouldn't be. And I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
"You need a break."
Right. Oh,
We're we need breaks. We're
that's
taking
that's
breaks,
an
we need breaks.
of course, no, that I mean,
Yeah,
that's another thing. I mean, just
yeah,
to go on a mini spiel there, I
yeah,
think that's another thing too that I would love to see prioritized, across ABA,
yeah.
because
It's not the only,
to
it's lots of clinics that yeah,
yeah, yeah, because I think for us, when going back to like expectations, I mean, it's hard to do, and I was the same way. Like, I need my 30 minutes, or even an hour to really like just step away, because for us to do that job, you have to be like running on all cylinders, and like, because clients will pick up on like, okay, like, let me put in this DoorDash
yeah,
order, and like, I have like an eye on you, but like not really, so if I could take this to be my soapbox, like, please, companies, give your RBTs like a real break, so that they can
right.
be running on all cylinders. Because even if you are able to like have like a floater step in for, 5 to 7 minutes, it's still like it's hard, like the level of engagement that direct care really requires, it's not something that you can kind of just stroll into. It's a real job. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I do think it's important, like you said, even like a floater stepping in. And that's kind of the clinic side. I think, for in-home, like it's very different. It's a different situation. Like
of course.
typically you're not there for, 30 or 40 hours with your kid
Yeah,
and you can like you have more flexibility as far as that. And
exactly.
but I do think the breaks are important. Some people I'm like, I don't know how you do it. Like I don't know how you're
Oh yeah.
day, like, I don't know, like, I'm like, this is
Yeah.
got a tough job, like, it's tough,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're doing it.
No, I mean, for me personally, I remember, I mean, I, I can't even think of too many situations where I would stay for, I mean, I just needed that time
Yeah,
to
that's
step
important.
away. And I'm very much a like, go sit in my car, throw on a podcast for a little bit, and then get back in. Because I mean, yeah, staying in a clinic all day and just, going
Yeah,
client to client, it's hard. I'm not blessed with that skill. I'm great for 3 hour chunks, and then I need to step away for a second. Yeah, it's definitely something I would love to see ABA, especially in the clinic, prioritize
mm,
a lot more. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, me too, I agree, and I think, kind of what I was saying about having a break, like, we're teaching a lot of our clients, like, "Hey, like, if this is too much, like, you need a break right now, you can go."
exactly.
So we should be able to have that opportunity too, like, our staff should be able to have
Hmm.
a break as well. So, you come back,
100%.
refresh yourself, like, come back.
Yes.
So I think it's really important, and then just for the text listening, what can they do to strengthen their relationships, with supervising analysts?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's gonna sound so corny and so cheesy, but like really being yourself. And I love when, whether even if our personalities aren't like an automatic match, I've found that texts that allow their personality to seep into their session just makes it a lot more of a natural experience. I think there's I'll just say it, I think there's like a unspoken kind of ABA culture, especially in clinics that, it's not exactly cookie cutter, but it's a little cookie cutter, but where texts just kind of have not a script, but kind of a script of, this is what I say and this is what I do. But I always love when I find a tech that's like, well, this is me, this is what I'm into. And, they really are find ways to kind of show a little bit of their personality and what's meaningful to them. Like, I'll give an example. I have an RBT that is really into music, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna bring my guitar into session and I'm gonna probe that to see if that's something that my client
That's
would
cool.
enjoy as a reinforcement, right? And I was like, you know what, that's just so outside the box. Like, I can't play guitar, right? I appreciate it so much of like, like that's something that is meaningful to you, and it shows that like you're putting the best version of yourself into your session, even if it's not something I can connect with directly. I would like to think that any analyst would appreciate that level of like openness and commitment from their BTs. So I would just say like be yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like what you said too about putting your personality into it. And I think too, especially when first starting, everything's kind of robotic. Like, okay, I have
Yes.
to read this and the SD says, "What do
Yep.
you want? What do you want?" Like,
Yes. Oh, yeah,
um,
exactly.
so
Yeah, yeah.
I love yeah, the personality because that's not real world. Like
It's
we've got to
not, no.
generalize our skills too. So
Yeah, and like,
yeah.
see, like it's always so funny, and like bless their hearts, like
Yeah.
when you'll get a new crop of BTs and you're just hearing the cookie cutter, the script of we can't, or like, we can ask for this, and like,
Yeah.
and I understand the pressure of like, hey, like you're doing the thing now, so it's like you
Right.
really want to make sure that you get it right. But I would really encourage BTs to take the time to obviously like hone in on your skills, but also like it's okay to also let your personality kind of seep into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
That's so important to be able to. put your personality into it because and I think when you first start, like, it's like, okay, like one of the and some clinics are different, some analysts are different as far as the saying no, like, don't say no, like, say this is unavailable is an example of that. And
Of course.
trying to find other ways to say no. It's like, this is not available because it's something they probably were never used to
Oh, of
say.
course. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like,
Uh,
yeah, it's hard too because there is, like, an ABA language. There's such an ABA language, but it's like, okay, how can I find a unique way to be true to ABA and, like, and the principles of, like, going to redirection and, like, focusing on what is a possibility, but while still just not sounding like a robot too.
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think that's super, super important. I like that. So what for analysts, what's one habit that can dramatically improve the support that they provide to their team?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of things. I think one thing that that jumps out right away is consistency. I've found the cases that have seen the most growth for me have been the sessions where or the cases where, you know, I'm there, my techs know when I'm coming, they have their questions ready, we find times to meet outside of session. So there's not it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Right.
So just, consistency as far as like programming and reaching out to techs, being open for feedback from them. Yeah, I think consistency is probably the biggest thing for me. And I know myself, I still have ways to grow as far as that, right? I would say that's probably been the biggest thing that's led to success for me.
Yeah, and consistency can be hard, like, overall, like, being consistent and so important in our field and learning
Yeah.
and teaching these skills to be consistent, but that definitely can be a challenge too. So what kind of recommendations would you have for somebody that was just becoming or wants to become a BCBA? What kind of recommendations would you have for them?
Yeah, I would say I think finding a mentor is so important. That's one thing. ABA can look very different clinic to clinic, right? But I think finding a mentor who's been doing it for a while and who has sound practice, for me, that's been one thing that's just been, I mean, you can't put a price on it. Like, I'm still in really close contact with some of those BCBAs that first pushed me to go for my master's, and I'm still applying the principles that they were instilling in me during their supervision almost like 3 4 years ago now. Just, having that go-to person for, like, whether it's like, how do I run this again, to like, okay, how do I upload this to the BACB, like that
Right.
whole range of things. Because I mean, my goodness, I mean, getting my BCBA is probably one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life, right? And having someone that you can count on consistently to help you step by step, even if it's, technically not the person who you is like assigned to you like for your unrestricted hours, having like a consistent BCBA who's been practicing for a while, just it's so valuable. Like, I
Yeah.
can't you can't even put it into the words. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite things is helping the students too. Like I love
Yeah.
being able to like walk them through. And then sometimes I'm like, when the board makes changes and I'm like, let me look at that.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's
Right.
figure this
Right.
out together because I think there's a new requirement.
No, literally. And
Yeah.
like, I remember myself like being so lost, and there's so much to read about, like, okay, is this a verified course, or like,
Right. Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
does this count for that? Or, I mean, I remember, like, for me, I call it like whiteout gate, because I remember I had to like make an edit to one of my verification forms, and then I didn't know that I had to like get a signature,
Yeah.
next to the white, and like, oh my goodness, like having like that person to be like, no, I got you. Let me show you how to do it. And it just puts your mind at ease, because it's so daunting dealing with the board as,
A lot.
a student. Like, sometimes it can just feel like it's you against the world. So having someone in your corner who wants to see you take that next step to becoming a BCBA, it's just so valuable.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I just want to thank you so much for Phil for coming on and sharing some of your insight. I think this is really important stuff like in our field. I think having the rapport with the technicians. And then also the antecedent manipulations. And something we just don't always think about is that having the rapport with an RBT is a proactive strategy. And
It
that's something
really is. Yeah.
keep in mind. It's very important. So, Phil, is there anything before we sign off that you would like to share with our listeners today?
I would just say to all the students out there, I have a soft spot for them. Just stick with it.
You've
If
been
you
through it.
need, go hound your BCBAs to get your verification form signed. Just
Yeah.
just stick with it because it's worth it. Yeah, that's like I said, I've said it a million times. Like my passion really is with RBTs and with students. Just stick with it because when you pass that exam, it's going to be worth it. And, it just gives you so much flexibility, as far as your day to day. So stick with it. It will be worth it and
Yeah.
get her done.
Yeah. That's right. Get her done. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
All right, Phil. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure having you. Just remember, listeners, you are not in this journey alone.
Thanks, Allie.